What's everyone? Welcome to Mistic Reacts. Today I'm reacting to another video by Trust Me Bro, Japan's Most Wanted list. Now, I have an idea of what might be on the list, or who, but I'm not really for sure. So let's see if I actually know any of these criminals. And make sure to check out him down below. And if you would like to see videos from this channel or other channels of mine, check out my Patreon for some content. And let's get on into it.
The most wanted fugitives in Japan.
Mhm.
If you're watching this video, you've probably heard of the FBI's most wanted list, a list of criminals
Yeah.
most wanted by the United States government. This list has existed for almost a century.
Oops.
And if you're a regular viewer of Trust Me Bro, then you would know that I've actually made 2 videos about the FBI's most wanted list. But did you know that in
Okay.
Japan they also have a most wanted list?
Mhm.
Don't worry, I didn't either. But once I learned that Japan had a most wanted list, I was
I feel like
definitely
most
intrigued.
countries
To be honest, I was
probably
even
have
surprised to
one.
find out that Japan had crime in general. But to discover that they had a most wanted list was shocking. And trust me when I say this, the people on this most wanted list definitely earned their spot. And today we're going to discuss who's on the list and what they did to
like
get there. Let's get
most
started.
do.
Hiroshi Kokure. Hiroshi
Hiroshi
was born in
Kuroke.
1969 and stands at roughly 170 centimeters tall. And for
What
the
is
first
that in
part of his
freedom
life, Hiroshi
units?
seemed to live a semi-regular life. He was a truck driver and typically kept to himself. That was until he met a girl he liked on one of his deliveries. This woman worked at a retail store and she happened to work there every time Hiroshi was dropping off inventory. Although this casual, friendly, professional relationship would quickly develop into something much darker. As Hiroshi was not only developing a crush, but also an obsession with this woman. Every time Hiroshi would make a delivery and this woman was working, he would plead and beg with her to please take her on a date. And eventually she caved in. Although it was on this date that she reluctantly went on that she realized how creepy this guy was. They drove around the city chatting. The entire time the vibes were completely off. And when she made it clear that it was time to go home, Hiroshi made sure to take the longest way home possible. And unfortunately, when he dropped her off, he was able to learn and memorize her address. And after this date, this woman never saw Hiroshi again, as she would ignore him at her job, and anytime he would try to call her work or her home, she would ignore. That was until Hiroshi did something she could not ignore. On January 14th, 1998, after a few weeks of finally not being harassed at home or at work, this woman that Hiroshi had been harassing was starting to feel that her stalker had finally gotten bored. That was until she got home that day after work. She opened the door into her apartment just like any other day, and almost as soon as she closed her apartment door, she was attacked. She was held down and restrained by a mysterious man until she was able to look at this man's face and realize that this was Hiroshi. Hiroshi had broken into her apartment, and not only that, but he'd also now restrained her, and she had nowhere to go. Obviously panicking, she was calling out to her family, which she lived with, but nobody was responding. And over the course of the next 2 hours, it's reported that Hiroshi confessed his love to her, and they spoke for hours on end. That was until he got up and left her apartment. Once Hiroshi had got up and left the apartment, this woman was able to get onto her feet and wiggle out of the restraints that Hiroshi had put her in. And that's when she discovered what really happened. Hiroshi had murdered this woman's entire family. Her mom, dad, and grandma. All of her family that lived with her in this apartment. And although she herself survived, her life was forever changed. Now, with that being said, what happened to Hiroshi? To put it bluntly, nobody knows. Hiroshi, to the day of recording this video, is still on the loose. After 27 years of searching and over 2,500 tips submitted to the Japanese government, Hiroshi has never been caught. And now Hiroshi is in his mid-50s, and at this point may never be caught. The ultimate motive for these murders is still unknown, and Hiroshi is still at large. And because of this, Hiroshi is not only one of the most wanted criminals in all of Japan, his case is one of the longest running fugitive hunts in all of Japanese history. The Japanese government is currently offering over 3 million yen for any information that leads to the arrest of Hiroshi. And every year on the night of the murder, the Japanese government redistributes flyers in hopes that they will finally get a tip that brings Hiroshi to justice. Obara Katsuyuki. Katsuki was born in 1979 and stands at 170 centimeters tall, and is also wanted for murder. On June 28, 2008, Katsuki lured a 17-year-old girl to meet him at a 7-Eleven. This girl was friends with his ex-girlfriend, and he called her and asked her to meet up with him at the 7-Eleven because he told her that he wanted to talk to her about getting back with his ex-girlfriend. This girl agreed, and that night they met up at a local 7-Eleven. Although after their interaction, this girl was never seen again. At least, not alive. As 3 days later, on July 1st, 2008, her body was found, dumped in a river an hour away from the convenience store, and Katsuki was nowhere to be found. The autopsy revealed that this girl had been strangled and then bludgeoned in the head, and then dropped off a short bridge into the shallow river in a very rural area. But this isn't all that Katsuki did, as he not only allegedly murdered and dumped this woman's body, but he also tried to stage his own death. As near this river, he also reportedly intentionally crashed his car to make it seem like he suffered a brutal car accident. Now, ironically, the police didn't buy this at all, and this stunt only gave the police more evidence that this fugitive was likely the murderer, as his vehicle had blood and hair from the victim in it. And the location where this crashed car was found was highly unlikely to actually be a real crash, as the road was straight and visibility on this road was high, meaning that it was unlikely that a one-car accident would just happen randomly. But on top of the dumped body and dumped vehicle, Katsuki also dumped his own personal items near a local cliff, only 7 kilometers away from his home, to make it seem like he ended his own life by jumping off this cliff. Once again, the police were not buying this whatsoever. And although Katsuki has never been seen, they believe that he is still at large to this day. And if that is the case, then Katsuki is currently 43 years old and has been on the run for over 17 years. The Japanese government is currently offering up to 3 million yen for any information that leads to the arrest of Obara Katsuki.
And I think most wanted, I think, like,
Mitate was born in 1979 and stands at 167 centimeters tall. He is described by the most wanted list as well-built, and notably has scars on his left forearm, above his right eye, and across the front of his forehead. And Mitate is wanted for murder and unlawful assembly with dangerous weapons.
Yeah, that
Mitate
kind of thing
was
is
a
what I
genius,
think of.
but he was also a psychopath, and this combination quickly led him to mischief. And early in his adult life, he ended up starting a motorcycle gang with some of his other less than considerate acquaintances. Mitate's gang was dangerous and seemed to assault with almost no reason or discretion, which leads us to the night of the incident in question. In the early morning hours of September 2nd, 2012, Mitate and a few members of his gang entered a nightclub and ended up savagely murdering the 31-year-old restaurant manager. Mitate and his 11 henchmen beat this man in front of his friends in the VIP area of this club. And one of the most unfortunate parts about this gruesome sneak attack is that unless this crime was totally random violence, they likely had the wrong person, because the person that this gang had murdered had absolutely no gang ties and was not currently wanted by anybody, leading people to believe that this was simply a case of mistaken identity. Just imagine trying to go to the club to relax one night when all of a sudden you are savagely beaten to death by 11 Japanese gangsters with metal baseball bats, all because they thought you were someone else. Or for that matter, imagine if you just witnessed your friend be murdered only for you to question why anybody would want to do this, and knowing that you can't do anything to prevent it or to help him, unless you wanted to become their next victim. Fortunately, early that following year in 2013, 15 suspects in this murder were identified, and 9 of them were charged with unlawful assembly and manslaughter. However, one man was not arrested or charged at all. That man, of course, being Mitate Shinichi. It is reported that almost immediately after the murder, he fled directly to the Philippines, where he stays to this day. But unfortunately, that claim is not confirmed. And to this day, Shinichi has been on the run for over 13 years and is one of the Japanese government's most wanted fugitives, with the Japanese government offering over 6 million yen for any information that could lead to this crime lord's arrest. I know we are just getting started with this list, but if you're already getting stressed out, don't worry, because I have 2 things to offer you: chill vibes and a holiday sale you cannot beat. The holiday, of course, being 420, and the chill vibes are provided by today's video sponsor, 5CBD. 5CBD is the company providing safe, affordable, quality, and legal CBD products to adults in the United States. And their high-potency gummies are perfect for catching the right
use his code if you are, at the legal age. I'm not gonna make a comment as I am not 21. Still got like a year and a half.
top 5 CBD website from now until April 20th, 420, which if you're watching this on release day is in 2 days. If you've got one of their free samples before and are looking to stock up, now is the time. Thank you, Five, for sponsoring this video. And now let's get back to some people that are not chill at all. Yoichi Hata. Hata is the youngest fugitive we've talked about on this list, and his case is the most recent. Hata was born in 1996, meaning that today he is only 29. Hata stands at 175 centimeters tall, and he is wanted for a hit and run, which could possibly lead to him walking away a free man if he can remain in hiding long enough. But I'll explain that later. Hata was known locally to be a troublemaker, someone who would be disrespectful in public, something that was a massive no-no in Japanese culture. He was frequently in legal trouble, was often belligerent in public, and while the extent of his crimes and disorderly conduct were typically tame, what he did on June 29th, 2022 was anything of the sort. Around 3 a.m. on the morning of the incident, Hata was walking through a parking lot towards his car, playing music loudly from his phone, which was in general uncalled for, but especially at that hour, very disrespectful. And 2 university students getting on their motorcycles mentioned to him that he should potentially turn down his music. Hata didn't want to be lectured by 2 university students and shooed them off. The students got on their motorcycles and rode away. They left the parking lot and only got maybe half a kilometer down the road when they hit a red light. These 2 friends were likely talking to each other at this red light, potentially discussing the weirdo they just ran into, when they heard something abrupt. They heard the rev of an engine and headlights heading directly for them, seemingly out of nowhere. And in a flash, both of these men were struck by a car that was going anywhere from 80 to 100 kilometers per hour, sending these 2 students and their motorcycles flying, and unfortunately leaving one of them dead on the scene. After striking these 2 students, Hata lost control of his vehicle and struck a light pole, where he abandoned his car and fled the scene on foot, where he was never seen again, at least not by law enforcement. Almost all of Hata's personal items were in the vehicle that was left, and a bit further away from the crime scene, the police found his shoes and shirt. And while thousands of tips have been submitted directly to the Japanese officials, at the time of recording this video, Hata is still on the loose. However, there are a few theories about his current whereabouts and method of escape. See, his shirt was found at a harbor near the edge of the city he lived in. Some believe that he, like another entry on this list, tried to leave items near water to insinuate that he had ended his life in the water. Others believe that he tried to swim but likely ended up drowning accidentally, and some people believe neither of these. In Japan, CCTV is everywhere. However, in the harbor of the city that Hata lived in, there was little to no surveillance anywhere, making the harbor a perfect place to essentially disappear. Some believe that Hata ditched his shirt at the harbor so he could leave the scene looking like a shirtless jogger, and allowing him to run in between cities without being at least immediately detected by cameras. Regardless of the theories, the fact is that Hata is still on the loose. And as if this cold-blooded murder and attempted murder wasn't enough, the way that the police had been treating this case is more than upsetting and will likely make your blood boil. You see, when the police arrived at the crime scene shortly after it happened, the police immediately had access to Hata's home address via his ID that was in the wallet that he abandoned at the crime scene, although they didn't go to his home address until 2 days after the incident, giving him plenty of time to get away. And on top of this, the crime that Hata is being charged is not murder, but actually hit and run, which may sound potentially accurate, but there's a major issue with that. And in Japan, all traffic violations have a statute of limitations of 7 years, meaning that if you commit a traffic violation and don't get caught or charged for it within 7 years, you are by default not guilty and can no longer be charged. However, in Japan, if you are charged with murder, there is no statute of limitations, which is a good thing, because if you murder somebody in Japan, it doesn't matter if it takes them 50 years to find and charge you. If you murdered someone and they can prove it, you are going to jail. Here's the issue. The family of the victim is urging the Japanese government to please switch Hata's charge from a hit run to murder, because as of now, Hata is still on the run, and there is a chance that he may not be caught within the 7-year period that he can be charged for this hit and run. And if the Japanese government only tries to charge Hata with hit and run and not murder in 7 years, or at this point in 4 more years, if Hata is able to remain in hiding, there is a good chance that he will walk away serving no time for literally murdering a man in cold blood. Understandably, people are extremely upset about this, and although the Japanese government is offering 3 million yen for any information that leads to Hata's arrest, a private group is also offering an additional 5 million yen for any information leading to his arrest, which goes to show how much people want this case to be solved and how much they want Hata to be brought to justice. The refusal from the Japanese government to switch the charge from hit and run to murder after hundreds of thousands of people have pleaded with them to change the charge says a lot, and I feel so strongly for the family of the victim. The 4 cases I've just discussed are the cases that the Japanese government are most eager to solve. They have the most information, the most infamy, and they also have the highest bounties. And every other YouTube video about Japan's most wanted list only discuss these 4 fugitives. However, they're not the only criminals on the most wanted list. And because this is Trust Me Bro, and we make some of the best videos around, I'm gonna quickly speed round all of the other criminals on Japan's most wanted list that nobody else has talked about. For good reason. I'm not throwing shade. There's really not too much information available, but there's enough to at least briefly discuss. So let's go through it quickly. Lin Shaowei. Lin Shaowei was born in 1973 and stands at 178 centimeters tall and is wanted for robbery and murder. On October 1st, 1999, Lin was caught stealing from a pachinko parlor, and when called out by an employee, Lin ran out of the pachinko parlor and tried to escape. And once the employee caught up to Lin, Lin turned around and stabbed him in the chest. The man ended up passing away, and Lin is still on the loose to this day. Yoshaya Tsuyoshi. Yoshaya was born in 1977 and stands at 172 centimeters tall. He is reported to have curly hair, which, I mean, I don't know if this is Japanese curly, but it's definitely not curly. And he also has a round scar on his forehead. And he is wanted for murder. On June 4th, 1999, during a brawl between 2 biker gangs at an apartment building, Yoshaya and 12 other gang members assaulted 2 men and murdered one of them, the victim being 19 years old at the time. Yoshaya is believed to be the ringleader of this gang, and while all other 15 suspects were arrested, Yoshaya has never been caught, arrested, or charged, meaning that he still remains at large 26 years later. Miyachi Yodai. Miyachi was born in 1975 and stands at 177 centimeters tall, the tallest person we've discussed in this video, and he is wanted for robbery causing injury. Miyachi allegedly broke into a home, robbed it, and caused injury to the homeowners in 2013, and unfortunately no other information is currently available, besides the fact that he is still on the loose.
In this case,
Li Hui. Lee was born in 1963 and stands at 165 centimeters tall. He has a burn scar on his right hand and on his right thigh. On December 15th, 2000, Lee and his accomplices are alleged to have entered the house of a dentist, where they tied up 2 women that were sleeping in the home. They hit these women in the face and then stole their cash, their guns, and their jewelry, worth at the time over 43 million yen. Similar to other cases we've discussed, every other accomplice in this crime, in this case 5 other men, were caught and arrested. However, the leader of this operation, Lee, is still at large, and he's been on the run for over 25 years now. Ochi Kiyoshi. Ochi Kiyoshi was born in 1952 and stands at 175 centimeters tall. I believe he's the oldest person we've talked about on this list so far, and he's wanted for murder. Information about this man is extremely limited, and the exact description of this man on the Japan's Most Wanted website goes as follows. The suspect is wanted for the murder of his spouse. Doesn't get more simple than that. Matsuyoshi Takeo. Matsuyoshi was born in 1949 and stands at 172 centimeters tall. He is now the oldest person we've talked about so far in the list, and he is wanted for murder. Takeo is alleged and wanted for the murder of 2 police officers in Okinawa in 1990, and after 35 years, he is still on the run. And assuming he is still alive today, he is 76 years old, meaning that if you're in Japan or are just visiting Japan and you're walking down the street and see a normal seeming old man walk by, he actually might be a wanted murderer. That's a creepy thought.
I doubt he's still in the area.
Tatsumi was born in 1976 and stands at 158 centimeters tall, and he is wanted for, I quote, murder and violation of the act of controlling the possession of firearms or swords and other such weapons. And while that kind of sounds funny, his crime is no laughing matter. Tatsumi is suspected and wanted for a shooting and murder that took place on September 12th, 2017. You know, shootings are rare in Japan. When we discussed the top 10 list, and guns have almost never come up. Tatsumi has currently been on the run for over 8 years. Japan is typically seen as nice, pretty, safe, and for that reason, I wanted to dig a bit deeper to see what the dark side of Japan looked like. And I think their most wanted fugitives list painted a pretty good picture for us. No place is perfect, and unfortunately, if people exist in a place, crime is also going to exist in that place. One thing I kind of gathered from doing research for this video is that a lot of people have issues with the Japanese prison system. And after looking at a few of these cases, I definitely see where they're coming from. It kind of seems like in some cases, the Japanese police and government would rather save face than admit to either being too lax or not being as thorough as they could have been. And for that reason, they would almost rather allow the public to do the research or to simply push the blame off themselves and reject questions altogether. But I'm curious, if you're familiar with any of these cases or have experience with the Japanese justice system, please let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend
check out his videos. I mean, the crimes are definitely bad, yeah. But for the most wanted, especially from, you know, the US point of view, I thought the crimes would be absolutely horrible and like government conspiracy type things. So I'm guessing the American version is definitely that. So maybe I'll check that out and see how it compares. But definitely check out his video down below and like and subscribe if you like my videos. Yeah. Bye bye. Until next time. Bye bye.